Cthulhu Death May Die. A game so good I had to buy it twice. Well, sort of. I got Fear of the Unknown, which is the third season of Cthulhu Death May Die, over Christmas, after I went over to Montreal to visit the directors of the company that I work for, and my boss introduced me to Cthulhu Death May Die, and I absolutely fell in love with it. So when I got back home during the Christmas holidays, I had a gift card for one of my local game stores, so I obviously had to pick it up. And then soon after that, introduced it to my friends. They fell in love with it as well, and then I was like, okay, this is a game that I can actually table fairly regularly. So I went out and got the Season 4 expansion for the Season 3, which is, I don't think it has a name. I think it's just called the Season 4 expansion. But if you don't know what Cthulhu Death May Die is, this is a Cthulhu or Arkham-based game, which I'm sure you might be familiar with, like the Arkham Horror games, Eldritch Horror, Elder Sign, Arkham Horror Living Card Game. They're all sort of set in that Lovecraftian universe, but they all typically take different mechanics and stuff like that in different ways, but there's a common theme throughout them, which is obviously going insane and fighting off the great old ones. And so Cthulhu Death May Die is no different. It is set in the Lovecraft universe. However, it is going to be sort of a dice-chucking cooperative game where you are working your way through various what are called episodes, which are sort of self-contained missions, and on top of that, fighting against different types of great old ones. For example, we got little Great Azathoth over here. And I absolutely love this game. It's probably one of my favorite board games to date, and I can definitely see why this game has such a big fan base. It's a game that I've seen over the course of the past few years here and there with like their Kickstarters and stuff like that. If you are familiar with CMON, this is one of their games, the publisher. And I believe they have another Kickstarter going on right now for like the fifth season, which is like Forbidden Reaches or something like that. And I think they even have the next one planned as well for season 6, which I'm guessing is going to be the expansion to season 5. However, the nice thing about this game and what I love about it, and similar to sort of the Arkham Horror Living Card Game, is the modularity of it. So with all of these different episodes, they come in these little handy boxes, and they're all separate. They're all self-contained, so you don't have to play through them in order or anything like that as they come in the box. They are labeled, season 1 or episodes 1 to 5 or whatever, but you don't have to play them in order when you get them in the box. On top of that, you do get various great old ones. Season 3 has 2 different great old ones, and then the season 4 expansion has another one, but you can get standalone ones. There's also season 1 and season 2, which have those particular great old ones to fight against. And the nice thing is you can mix and match any great old one with any episode. So it creates this really, really great modular experience. It's another reason why I love the solo board game Final Girl. It's a very similar concept where you have like the different characters in Final Girl versus whatever killer you want in the various different boxes, and you can mix and match those and like mix and match locations. This is pretty much exactly the same concept, so it's really, really fun. It provides a lot of replayability, but the best thing I like about this game is, unlike Arkham Horror Living Card Game, which I don't get me wrong, is probably one of my favorite Arkham Horror games just due to how thematic it is. This game, I do like the plug and play aspect of it. It is extremely easy to set up, and it's not only that, the mechanics are fairly simple. If you're unsure of how to play Cthulhu Death May Die, it's fairly straightforward. I think someone's fighting upstairs in my apartment. Apologies if you hear banging around. This is a 1 to 5 player cooperative game. So you can play this game solo. The rule book suggests you play 2 investigators at once. So these are the investigator cards. There's a load of them, as you can see here. I have about 16 of them between the core season 3 core season 3 box, the Fear of the Unknown box, and the season 4 expansion, which brought 6 new ones. So I have 16 in total, and that is a small percentage of the investigators out there. There's a lot of homebrew content as well from, this is a very dedicated community and dedicated fan base. But these investigators are the characters you'll be controlling as you work your way throughout the map, fighting off against not only monsters, but cultists, and your goal is essentially to disrupt the ritual, and that is done by various means. Each episode has its own way of disrupting the ritual, because obviously these little cultists, they want to summon their great old one, and your job is to disrupt the ritual, which will then summon in the great old one onto the board and sort of make him vulnerable, so you can actually attack him, damage him, and then hopefully kill him without going insane first. Each of the investigators have their own special ability at the top here, and this one is always unique to each character. However, the other two are sort of different combinations of a common pool of abilities, but that does provide a lot of unique, fun things that you can do with each character. As you progress through the game, you will obviously have different amount of health for the character. Well, actually, all the characters have the same amount of health. You have the health, you have what is called stress, where you can take on stress to do various things, such as get new items throughout the episode that are, that will help you disrupt the ritual. But in addition to that, you can utilize it as, utilize them for rerolls, which is nice. But on top of that, at the very top is the most important track, which is your insanity track. So as you work your way and as you get more insane by rolling these little dice, each time you make a roll, whenever this tentacle sign pops up, that means you get an insanity, whether or not it's on an enemy roll against you or it's one of your own rolls. After the rerolls are done, for every tentacle that you get, you move your insanity up by 1. Now, when you reach these red markers, your insanity will stop there. So, it doesn't give you excess sanity. So if you were right at the 3rd marker, for example, and you got like 5 insanity, you'd only move up to the next red marker. So it's sort of a blocker to slow your insanity down at least a little bit. But when you go to these insanities, you will trigger your trauma card or your psychosis card. Each of these psychosis cards are pathology cards. They're different, and each investigator grabs a random one at the start of the game. They can be everything from being very aggressive, maybe you have a little bit of bloodlust, maybe you get hallucinations, but they typically will have an upside and a downside that you have to manage by the time you hit these red markers. Your insanity will trigger, but also you get to level up. So each time you hit one of these red markers, you get to choose one of your abilities and make them stronger. Now, that is sort of the main mechanic of progressing your character. On top of that, you will get items whenever you end your turn in a space that does not have an enemy in it. You will be able to investigate. You'll draw one of these discovery cards, and it'll give you an option. They're sort of two-sided most of the time. They'll usually sometimes give you a choice, or sometimes you will be forced to take one side or the other, and you can slot those in to the left or the right side under your sheet just to show you're carrying a specific side of an item. And these discovery cards are very important because they're typically things that will be directly related to disrupting the ritual or just benefit you in some way, whether it be combat or survival or whatnot. However, on top of that, you will also be dealing with the mythos cards, which mythos cards will spawn in enemies, they'll mess with you, they're all bad things that can happen. But not only that, if you'll notice this little red circular sign at the top there, if 3 of those get into the discard pile at the end of your turn, then you will progress and advance the Great Old One along this track here. Now, once the Great Old One hits the red portion of this track, he'll be prematurely summoned into the map where he will chase you around, essentially try to murder you, make you go insane, all that fun stuff. However, if you have not disrupted the ritual by this point, he is still invulnerable. So you will still need to try to work your way, disrupt the ritual before he can kill you, and then you'll actually be able to make him vulnerable, where you can then progress through his various stages. And each Great Old One has various stages where he gets stronger, cumulative abilities, until eventually you hit the final stage and hopefully are able to murder him at the end there. Now, you're just juggling a whole bunch of stuff. You have sort of little mini games and objectives you have to complete. You'll be facing against cultists, but also you'll be facing against various monsters. And again, the combination, the modularity of this game is really fun because each episode brings in its own episode-specific monsters, but also each Great Old One brings in its own specific set of monsters. Typically, you'll always have cultists to deal with as well, because, come on, someone needs to work on the ritual. Now, regarding the Great Old One, if you do happen to get the Great Old One summoned and disrupt the ritual, he'll then be summoned no matter what when you disrupt the ritual onto the board, where you will try to fight him. However, this little marker here will still keep track of his progress. He can still advance, and if he gets to the very end here, then you lose. As it's not an Arkham game if there's not more than one way to instantly lose. You will also instantly lose if one of your investigators goes insane or dies before you disrupt the ritual. That is also a thing, but you know what? After you disrupt the ritual, it doesn't really matter how many people go insane or die. The game won't end, at least. And that's the main mechanic. Now, I do really like the Fear of the Unknown box, which is Season 3. Now, the nice thing is, Season 1 and Season 3 are sort of like the big standalone boxes, and then Season 2 is sort of the expansion to Season 1, and Season 4 is the expansion to Season 3. However, you can still mix and match most things. I do believe, though, that like season 4, for example, does require some tiles from season 3, and the season 2 expansion requires some tiles from season 1, if I'm not mistaken. So if you are going to be buying into this game, if you are interested in getting this game, definitely pick up one of the core boxes first. So that's either going to be season 1 or season 3, which is called Fear of the Unknown. I would recommend Fear of the Unknown, which is the one I got, because it also includes these cards, which are called relics. And these are extra items that your investigators will get at the start of the game. And they're always good. There's no downside to them. And you can see that they give you an ability. And then also, when you level up your insanity, when you get to the 3rd marker, they all flip over and they get sort of a super boost, and they get a better version of their original ability, which is very, very cool. My friends and I have probably loved this mechanic the most, because this is not something that was in the 1st or the 2nd season. On top of that, the Fear of the Unknown box also includes unknown monsters, which can make the game harder if you want to. So in addition to the episode monsters and the Great Old One monsters, you can also even include unknown monsters, where you will randomly draw an unknown monster, and these are various monsters that are from other boxes or other episodes, and they'll generally be stronger versions of those monsters. So you can have up to 2 unknown monsters, and just like an Arkham game as well, these games are very, very difficult. Like my friends and I, it's usually fairly close by the end of it, and we have also lost a couple of times playing with the relics, which make the game easier, but playing with no unknown monsters. So the game is also modular in difficulty that way. You could play with no relics, and then 1 unknown monster. You could play with a relic and unknown monster, or you could play with 2 unknown monsters and a relic as well, which is sort of all the content available. But yeah, I absolutely love playing this game. The cool thing as well is just the dice roll mechanic is also very simple. Like, you're always rolling 3 green dice, and then sometimes you'll also get a certain amount of you're always rolling 3 black dice, and then you're adding a certain amount of green dice depending on abilities and stuff like that. The benefit to the green dice is that they don't come with the tentacle symbol, but sometimes you want that. And that's sort of the fun thing about this game, is that you do sort of have that balancing act that you can find in a lot of Arkham games, where you're wanting to go a little bit insane because, generally you get stronger, you can power up, level up in this game, but you don't want to go too insane too quickly, especially if you haven't disrupted the ritual yet. Insanity can go very, very quickly. One of my friends, when he was playing in turn 1, he got 8 insanity in turn 1, because if you do end your turn not in a safe space, so you end your turn with an enemy by you, you don't get to draw one of these discovery cards. Instead, the enemy attacks you. And not only do you get insanity for your own dice rolls, you get to roll the dice for enemies attacking you, because you can also apply insanity yourself. But the nice thing is the stress does come in handy. A little bit of stress never hurt anybody, right? The stress you can actually re-roll the enemy's dice as well. So yes, I just wanted to talk about this game a little bit. I definitely want to record a Let's Play for this video. As you can tell though, this game is does take up quite a bit of space, and I do need to figure out a better lens or a better camera setup so I can actually get a bigger view of the table. But I wanted to make a quick video just talking about my love of this game, because I think it's a really, really fun one. It's also a really fantastic solo game, because it's one of those games where, unlike Kingdoms Forlorn or Kingdoms Death Monster or Aeon's Trespass Odyssey or all those really, really big campaigns that, you can play them solo, it still requires a lot of bookkeeping, a lot of sort of cognitive load, a lot of mental work. This game, the mechanics are super, super simple, and the game goes by very, very quickly. You can play at a very fast pace, but there's still, at the same time, a lot of decision making to be done, and strategy involved as well, which I really, really like. It's very, very engaging at the same time. It's not just moving a model, rolling dice, and just sort of seeing what happens. You could probably argue big picture that's what the game is, but when it comes to utilizing your relic as best as possible, strategizing around the order of where you should be going, when you do move through enemy spaces, they actually follow you, so it can be strategic, to pull enemies towards another place with aggro, so your companions can go to another place and do an objective. So there is a lot of fun decisions to be had there. And the nice thing as well is it is a 5-player game. You can have up to 5 people playing this game, which is not super common. Typically a lot of these cooperative games stop at 4 players. So it's nice to have something where, you get a little bit extra. So I'm really looking forward to getting more of this game. I very much We'll probably end up getting more, if anything, probably like some of the standalone great old ones, because the great old ones, as well as the investigators, are probably the best way to sort of add replayability into the game. It's sort of similar to, again, the Arkham Horror living card game, where getting investigators and stuff like that, increasing your card pool is sort of the best way to provide replayability and getting new scenarios. So I'll probably end up doing it with this game. Yeah, this game's an absolute joy to play. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a solo board gamer, because yeah, it's not too difficult to get into. It's also a great, I think, entry level. Well, yeah, I would say entry level into sort of like more difficult board games if you play with a play group that is not very used to games like this, or like more complex games, outside of like the more traditional games like Uno, Monopoly, things like that. I think Cthulhu Death May Die is a fantastic one. Also, if you really like painting miniatures, the miniatures are actually really, really nice, and you do get a lot of them. There's quite a lot of things to paint up, not only investigators, but also just the great old ones, and the monsters themselves are really cool sculpts, which would be fantastic for like D&D games and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a really, really solid buy. So yeah, that's my little splurge. That's my little sort of just quick video on Cthulhu Death May Die and sort of why I really, really enjoy it and sort of the general overview of the game. Again, I want to get some gameplay on this on the channel. Not really sure when. I might see about getting a new lens or a new camera setup so I can at least have my camera a little bit further away from the table to get a better bird's eye view, because at the moment you can really only see about a little over half of my board game table, so it'd be nice to have a setup where you can see a little bit more. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. Big thanks again to anyone who's checked out my Kingdoms Forlorn videos. I really, really appreciate all the support on those ones. There'll be some more coming as well. My next video should be the sort of beginner's guide on Kingdoms Forlorn, utilizing the demo, which is a little bit more structured, because I know my first video I did talk a bit how to play the game as I played alongside it, but that one will be a little bit more of a shortened, structured video on exactly how to get into Kingdoms Forlorn. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.